can't really talk about Saints Row without drawing some clear comparisons to the Grand Theft Auto series, because it's very apparent where Saints Row draws its influences. Initially, the game just looks like a carbon copy of the Grand Theft Auto series. It's a game where you can run around through this crime-infested, fictitious American town, jacking anyone for their car, walking into stores just carrying guns and no one noticing, shooting people wantonly, running people down in the streets, causing all kinds of heinous crime and not really suffering any consequences for it. And it's got a mission-based structure, it's open-ended, so you can pretty much go anywhere, so on and so forth. Saints Row is a game about gang warfare. At the beginning of the game, you're just a nobody in the town of Stillwater, and you very nearly get caught up in the crossfire between several different gangs all having it out. You're rescued by a guy named Julius, who's the leader of the 3rd Street Saints, which is a gang that's trying to basically take back the streets in Stillwater. And that's the premise of the story. You join that gang and you help them take over the rival gang territory and basically stamp out anyone who gets in their way. Structurally, the game has 3 main storylines, each focusing on one of the 3 rival gangs to the 3rd Street Saints. You can choose to tackle these storylines in whichever order you wish, but you can't just take on one story mission after another, because the game has the system of you having to earn enough respect to then take on successive story missions. Initially, this seems a little heavy-handed because it pretty much forces you to take on some of the side missions and various activities in order to earn enough respect to just keep going through the story. But it turns out that a lot of these side activities are really quite fun in their own right, and this system only just helps you get introduced to the other aspects of play. Throughout the story, you play the role of sort of the silent protagonist. Your character is just there in the scenes, kind of nodding his head. He can look however you want him to look. The game starts off with this very robust character creation system where you could define your character's ethnicity and just, you know, how big or how small he is and so on. And later on, you could even get different types of clothes, which even influence the respect that you gain after each mission. It's nice how the on-foot action and the driving seamlessly blends together. Even when missions take you inside of buildings, there's no loading time or anything as you transition from outside to inside, and the controls are really rock solid. You've got a mini-map that shows you pretty much where all the enemies are in the vicinity, so there's really no question of where you're supposed to get to, who you're supposed to rub out, and so forth. While pretty much all of the stuff that Saints Row has to offer is quite fun, you may be expecting for a game like this to let you do even more. For example, the only thing that you're driving around in this game is cars. There aren't motorcycles on the street. Don't expect to be able to jump into airplanes or boats or anything like that either. There's a great variety of different cars. They're all original designs, but they look fantastic. Some of them look like old junkers, others look very modern and sleek and everything, and there's pretty much everything in between. But still, they're all of one variety of vehicles, so there aren't bicyclists, anything like that. In turn, this results in a fairly limited mission variety, because missions fundamentally have to revolve around either driving or shooting or some combination of those two things. And there's really, you get the feeling that there's really only so much that can be done with those two components, and indeed, the Grand Theft Auto series has already done an awful lot there, so if you've played those games, a lot of the stuff in Saints Row is going to seem very familiar. Nevertheless, Saints Row is quite a long game, actually. It should take you probably close to 20 hours to get through the main storyline for the first time, and that'll still leave you with a ton of other stuff that you could do on the side. Of course, there's also a multiplayer mode that you can jump into, although the multiplayer isn't really the strong suit of Saints Row. There are a variety of different modes, most of them for up to 12 players, and you could even start your own gang of friends and compete against other rival gangs in some of the team-based modes. You've got your basic deathmatch and team deathmatch. There's a mode called Big Ass Chains, in which you have to blast other players who then drop chains, and then you pick up those chains and drop them off at certain points. And there's even a couple of cooperative missions that you could play with one other friend, where you're up against tons of AI-controlled enemies. The thing is, all the multiplayer action feels a little flat. There isn't necessarily good feedback when you're just running and gunning, as you'll sometimes just drop dead seemingly for no reason, and other times you'll just kind of notice your health going down and realize you're getting hit from that. And you might also run into some noticeable lag when playing in some of the larger matches. One of the most obvious differences between Saints Row and the Grand Theft Auto series is just how much more impressive the presentation is in Saints Row, partly just because it's running on the Xbox 360's powerful hardware. While you'll spot some graphical glitches from time to time, overall, this is just a great looking game, and the action sequences in particular are just a lot of fun to watch. The frame rate holds up pretty steadily for the most part, although occasionally when the fur really starts flying, things do bog down a little bit. The audio is probably even better than the graphics overall. There's a great variety of music on the soundtrack covering just about every genre. You get into a car and you can change the radio station and all that, but there's a great selection of stuff there. You can even create your own playlist to listen to even while you're running around on foot. The voice acting in Saints Row is also excellent. Many of the best performances come from known celebrity voice actors like Keith David and Michael Clarke Duncan and David Carradine, and these guys all really live up to their names by putting in just very, very memorable characters, and it helps that the dialogue is actually surprisingly good in a lot of cases. A lot of games have tried to imitate the GTA formula, but Saints Row comes a lot closer than pretty much any other game has to actually accomplishing a lot of the same things, which is to deliver this realistic-looking experience that doesn't sacrifice just having a lot of fun pick-up-and-play gameplay with a lot of different stuff that you can do, you know, between driving and shooting and generally causing a lot of mayhem. So it's a lot of fun to play and very easy to recommend to just about anyone who isn't squeamish about their content.